Hi everyone, my name is Brian Garibaldi. I'm owner and director of Lake Cook Behavioral Health, and we're doing a Facebook Live and quick webinar type thing on opening a second office in your practice. I'm just going to start talking about stuff. This was brought up recently on a clinical therapist in Chicago Facebook group. That people had questions on how do you exactly open a second office, like what do you do? So Lake Cook Behavioral Health has 5 offices. We have 5 offices in the Chicagoland area, and so we of course have to manage those and set that up, so we kind of know a little bit about it. One of them is in Chicago, most are in the suburbs, but they're all in Illinois. I'm not sure how many of these rules or things I talk about apply to Illinois. I think it's to be kind of general. Let's go back. I'm a therapist. I'm a clinical therapist who's also has a background in technology. So I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. So sometimes it's good, especially have a business lawyer to kind of help set up things, especially things like the first question. So one of the things we saw that was on that group is that people asked, here's my question here, if people have a second office they set up and it has a different name, is that a separate business? Which is, I think, a great question. I think it's important to understand some of the basics of just how your business works. I know people who may have been sole proprietors who have started and turned into an LLC or something. They've kind of worked from their Social Security, and then have got a tax ID. They've kind of gone through that. So it's important to know that your TIN or your EIN, they call it actually, I think it's the same number, that identifies your business. And even if you have a separate location, that's usually, again, it depends on your business model, but usually you want to be under the same tax ID number. That's pretty important. You want to streamline anything. Otherwise, you're going to be operating like you have multiple businesses, which is just like going to be paying all across the board administratively. So you want to be under the same tax ID number. That's pretty important. Seems basic, but I'm kind of starting with the basics. The question on that Facebook group was that what if it has a different name? And when it comes to businesses, people can have multiple DBAs, they call it, doing business as. So if you're really operating a different name, you should have a DBA under that business. So that one business can operate as different business names. It's important to keep track of that. That has some implications on tax forms and everything like that. But you can have a different name. So that's the short answer. You just have to probably file a DBA is the best plan for that. Let's see, I've kind of outlined two or four major areas I was going to tackle here. And that was the first part of it, which has to do with a business / legal, how's everything set up. So I don't know if anyone joins in and has more questions on that, we could for sure go over it. I'm going to go into what I think is a critical point, which is workflow. How do you operate when you have multiple offices? What does this look like? What do you do? Where does the money come in? How are the clients? And this really is case by case specific. I'm a little in a good way obsessed with workflow and things being efficient. So this is something I spend a lot of focus on, a lot of time on, making sure there's no major gaps in how things operate. So we at Lake Cook Behavioral Health have a central office. Our Arlington Heights office is our central office, and we do most of our administrative work out of Arlington Heights. The other offices do not have admins. They don't have administrators. Fortunately, as everybody knows here, therapists, especially established therapists, can work very independently. They manage their own caseload, usually manage their own scheduling and things like that. So I think our niche, our area of business is uniquely adapted to, people can work in an office and not necessarily be super dependent on interacting with me every day and managing them. So we have a central office that's a lot of our intakes come in through. So our intakes can come in through either our central number or our office manager, our central office, or they can come in through individuals. They can come in either way. Often people are just connected right through a therapist. Everybody kind of knows how that works. But it's our kind of really oversaw and managed by our central office here with our office manager. So she, when it comes to day-to-day operations, she's way more important than me. She has more contact with everybody and is the connecting person there. And having someone you really trust and managing that's really important. Could you potentially do it without a central office manager? Sure, it depends on your size, and I think as soon as you go to a separate location, you're probably going to need to have someone that kind of handles that kind of thing. Let's see, I'm not sure exactly what everyone might have questions on, so I'm just going to hit some random topics here. I think one thing that's a little tricky sometimes is how are payments handled, like client payments, somebody's copay when it comes in the second office. So let's say you have a second office that's a remote office. How does that exactly, they take a copay at $20. Like, what happens to that, and how does it get to the central office, and how is it tracked, and all that good stuff? Well, if you're running a second office, I think you're going to lean heavily on the software you use, the practice management software you use. That's going to do a lot of the tracking that tracks payments and sessions and all that good stuff. We at Lake Cook Behavioral Health have our own proprietary software I've developed and bring to market, and currently in beta in that process. But the people who receive, the therapists who receive the money can actually mark that they received money. And for us, there's a status I call entered to let them know. But all payments are actually, for our office, sent to our central office in an envelope, like once a month or so, and 'cause that's like how our cycle is. And at our central office, we reconcile that, so it's marked as paid in that central office. So that's kind of how we operate as far as payments go. They actually, some therapists we have work in multiple offices, and they'll work in Arlington Heights, our main office, and the remote office. So sometimes we have somebody who's kind of responsible for bringing it over. They have special titles sometimes, and they kind of help manage that kind of thing. But it is often sometimes FedExed over because we can keep track of stuff. But I think the therapist, when therapists enter in money, it's good that they enter and they track, hey, I received payments, and then they can make sure it's reconciled. Let's see. So that's kind of like the rough thing of payments. When it comes to insurance billing for multiple sites, if you're using centralized software, now if you're using paper records, you're a little bit on your own. Sorry, that's it's multiple sites is very difficult to manage that. But if you're using software, they basically are going to enter their service dates in the software, and that's going to bill. It's going to bill from that. And hopefully electronically, or EOBs come into a central office, and it can all be reconciled there. So if you leverage technology the right way, it can be very easily done and can be very easily reconciled because it's all at the central location. That doesn't just happen automatically. There's a lot of setup that might need to happen from insurance to hi Michelle. There's a lot of setup that has to happen with insurance in order for this to happen. You have to make sure that your other I should probably just get into that part now. You have to make sure your other offices are set up with your insurance. Like, hey, I have this other office we're practicing out of. So to do that, to another office, you have to register it with insurance, and usually the therapist has to do that with CAQH, I believe. So that's the credentialing agency that everyone should know at least something about, unless we need to do a little webinar about that also. To say, hey, I'm practicing at these other locations, and when you're entering your service dates and stuff like that, it will know which location you're at. And when you're set up through insurance, when they make payments and you're reconciling that also needs to be set up through your electronic transfer and your electronic EOBs to be like, hey, we have these offices, but they all process centrally through here. So that's mainly just paperwork you have to fill out. It's not complicated by any means, but it's good to be able to kind of wrap your brain around that and know how it works. Let's see here. I kind of made a note to myself. I kind of make a few assumptions about just everybody's business model, especially in my next point. I'm going to talk about marketing. When it's a little bit different when you have to market multiple locations or your practice is bigger, and this could be a whole thing in itself. It's where do the clients come from when I have 4 offices, and how does this work? Where are they coming from? It's highly dependent on your business model. If you have some referral sources like a doctor, are they referring to you individually? Are you sending those out to other people in your practice? Are you doing online marketing? How's that coming in? When you're doing marketing for multiple locations, so you often have to set up separate Facebook pages, separate Google business accounts, not completely separate accounts, but separate locations you have to verify. Like in Google Maps, how do you get all your locations in Google Maps? That's something initially that requires some attention, because you don't want them to look up your business name and they only find your central location. So there is for sure even electronic marketing effort you're going to have to do to be like, okay, you might need a Facebook page for each location. We don't actually even have that. I don't have a Facebook page for Lake Cook Behavioral Health for every location. I probably should. Some things like Yelp might be set up for that, like Yelp is an online marketing thing. To have, oh, here's multiple offices, but often you might have to set things up separately because people who are local to that need to find it, need to find your business. But again, this is kind of wrapped up also into the business model, marketing, where your clients come from. I wish I had some more people to ask questions to be targeted because this is kind of a really kind of bigger question about things. Let's see here. What else can I target here? I'm looking at a quick list of stuff I wrote down for myself. Let's see. I think when challenged to multiple locations, especially me, again, I have 5 offices and I have a lot of very experienced therapists. Lake Cook Behavioral Health has been around about 30 years. It's been around long before I was practicing. And there's some clinicians who've been here pretty much, who started the place even since the beginning. And there's some very good things about them having lots of experiences, that they can work very independently and they know how to manage things themselves, and they have their own support systems and support networks clinically, which is great. But at the same time, when you have multiple locations, I think it's very easy to be disconnected from everybody. What it would take for me to visit every office weekly and meet with people and that would be kind of epic. So that's kind of the trade-off of that. If you just had a second location that was relatively close, that might not be a big deal. You could stop in for a meeting or things like that. I think especially if you have a lot of part-time people, it's even hard to wrangle everybody together for a meeting and things like that. But multiple sites starts to get to that kind of challenge where, how do I stay connected to therapists? I think it's a very common challenge for people in private practice to maybe be a little bit isolated, especially in small practices, really practice on their own. I think it's easy to get over-isolated, and I think as therapists, it's good to kind of fight that trend sometimes. That we're not over-isolating ourselves and we stay in contact, not just for clinical support, but just you working with clients for many hours a day. The isolating aspect maybe isn't good for our own mental health or just the clinical work we do. So that's a big deal. Is that okay? How are you going to stay in touch with people? Are you sending weekly emails at least to say, hey, here's the status of stuff, different projects or different updates with insurance and things like that. But that's kind of a big deal. Again, 2 locations might not be bad, but again, I have 5. One is in Hyde Park in the city. It's far. It's not close from where I am, especially in any kind of rush hour. So it's kind of challenging. We at Lake Cook Behavioral Health, we use an online phone system. So I don't know how much I think a lot of therapists use this now, especially a lot of not younger therapists. I don't know what's younger. Am I a young therapist, guys? I don't know. Yeah. These guys are youngsters. I think people are used to technology, and younger therapists are used to it. People who still have analog phone lines and are picking phones up, maybe not, but we use an online phone system. We use a system called Ring Central. Ring Central is a web-based phone system. There are other ones there's one called Grasshopper and things like that. That's an online phone system that basically manages your extensions, and there's apps, and basically when you make a call into the Ring Central number, it can ring your phone immediately if you want it to. There's all sorts of awesome settings. So as far as leveraging that, it's really awesome and easy to use. I can pick up my phone and I can dial from my phone, and it calls from the office number, and I call from my extension, and so the clients don't have your phone number if that's what you want and things like that. So a cloud-based phone system is really good for managing when you have a second office. It's really good because faxes can still go in one place. Everyone can have their own voicemail, even though everyone's remote. You could be on vacation and someone could check your voicemail if you wanted to, and you can pull up that stuff, and it's just really easy to use, and there's lots of options, and it's really an asset for anyone in bigger practices. In comparison to having just phone lines, it's very cost efficient and things like that. So I think there's a way to really leverage technology in that kind of way to make managing multiple sites easier. A site like Ring Central, you can actually fax out from Ring Central number. There's other ones that are like Grasshopper you can't fax out from. So there's different kind of challenges for those kind of things. I think it's funny people like our Facebook page that aren't therapists can log in and see me go over this stuff. So let's see. So that's like phone system. Again, that really helps that. It's important that whoever you have a phone system with, that they sign a business associate agreement. I should probably have a whole separate webinar thing just on technology and HIPAA and business associate agreements, because anyone that has any access to client/patient information needs a business associate agreement, including your software vendor. You can't just use a software vendor like, oh, we trust you with client data, it's okay. No, you have to have an associate agreement that they recognize and they keep that client information confidential, and they know the HIPAA laws and they agree to follow them. I'm not going to go into that too in depth, but it's important like your phone system has that. Your software vendor has that. Anyone that has access to any client data, your billing person needs a business associate agreement. Not just a contract, you need a separate, it could be built in a contract, but the terms for business associate agreements. And as you get to multiple locations and multiple sites, that's kind of important. Let's see, all right, I'm going to just randomly hit some things I just think about as far as managing multiple sites. Records, like authorizations, any paperwork becomes slightly more complicated when you have multiple sites. It's no longer just one location where it's like we have our storeroom and then we have a back storage we use and things like that. When you have multiple sites, every site might have their own file cabinets. Now, I'm really a proponent of everything electronic that I can. My staff probably even laughs at me on the side. I'm like, what are we doing with this paper? Get rid of this paper. What are you doing? Just because I'm trying to file everything electronically so it's easy to see, so our software can just pull stuff up. I don't have to go dig somewhere. We still do a lot of intakes that are paperwork that is still just hand paperwork. So there is still a lot of paper, but it's way less. We have to keep an eye on that because those file cabinets have to be locked on these remote sites, and we often have to bring them here when those files are closed. So that's what's happens. You have to transfer those things sometimes. As you have less paperwork, this becomes a little bit less of an issue because your file cabinets aren't full as much. But still, it's just another thing you have to manage with multiple sites, that there's going to be paperwork for clients in these other locations. You're not immediately there to keep an eye on it, so you have to give good procedures to make sure they're locked and everyone has enough space for those kind of things and stuff like that. How your business operates in the model can vary from every office, every therapy office. We kind of have hours on certain offices blocked out depending on who's using them. So we have some central calendaring that's kind of tied into the software, some central calendaring that we do. But I think a lot of therapists, my office managers, we don't schedule people for them right now. It's not even on our plan right now. I think everyone's so used to just scheduling themselves, so we don't do that. I think there are some therapists that can be scheduled by the office manager. I don't do that. I have in the past a little bit, kind of played with that, but I end up just doing it myself. I personally don't see a full-time caseload because I'm managing the business. I limit my clients. I prefer between 10 and 15 hours of clients, so I kind of try and limit my time on those kind of things. I'm trying to think what else I can hit. What's on my list here? Marketing, business model. Yeah, again, some of these are just wide open categories, like your business model. All right, multiple locations. Where do clients come from? Referral sources. I could probably answer some of that stuff offline if anyone has any questions. Let's see, we might wrap this up soon. Business, legal stuff. It is really good when opening another site to talk to business professionals about how that's going to operate. Especially either business lawyer. I don't know if you need an accountant for that really, because that's separate implications. But to talk to some legal professionals on how to set that up properly and what's covered under your corporate structure and things like that. Let's see. I think that's mainly it. It's 20 minutes. signing off. If anyone has any questions, you can contact me directly through the Lake Cook Behavioral Health Facebook site, or you could go to you can go to our websites. You can contact me at Brian at lakecookbehavioral.com. We're pretty easy to find on things like that. Also, if anyone ever wants to has interesting topics we'd like to go over, I'd love to do some interviews on different topics so we can go into some good subject matter. I think as therapists we have like great material and great content that people are like really interested in. It's got a cross benefit of promoting your practice, of course, but we have great material I think people would really benefit from and learn a lot from. So contact me if anyone ever need to. That's about it. Thanks, everyone.